listening to the Fantasy Takeaway Podcast with Murphy Hamilton and Joe Pollock. Proud member of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. Subscribe, listen, take home the title.
What's up, Takeaway Nation? Welcome into our Week 9 review show. Quick note to start out, we apologize for not having a show for last Thursday. All three of us somehow decided to die from different illnesses at the same time.
I'm still not doing too well over here. I got strep throat, and it's still kicking my butt a little bit.
Don't lie to us, Joe. We know Sam Darnold gave you mono.
I wish, man. Isn't he dreamy? Have you ever seen the picture of him with Josh McCown, and they're both fixing their hair together at the same time?
Like father, like son? Is that?
Dude, it was so funny.
That was the caption when I saw it.
Was
actually.
it?
Yeah.
Yes.
It looked funny. It was hilarious.
Jeff, how you doing?
Man, I'm hanging in there. It's I'm just glad to be vertical. Last week was pretty rough. Wife and I both got sick, and then both kids managed to get sick. So we've had an infirmary in this house here. We've all just been the walking wounded.
Count yourselves lucky, guys. I don't get time off work like you guys might, so I had to push through.
Oh, I worked through it. Make no mistake. Now, granted, I get to work from home, and I got to do it in my
doesn't count.
pajamas.
It's not the same, Jeff. It's not the same.
I mean, it still worked, and I still felt like hell.
I went to work outside, and it was 20 degrees outside, so I don't want to hear any of that crap, Murph.
That's stupid, and that's why you're still sick.
Probably.
All right, guys. So I want to start this show off with a question, something Joe and I were discussing earlier in our Admins and Mods group chat for the Facebook where we run. The young quarterbacks right now, the new generation that's starting in this wave of great young talent. You got players like Wilson, Mahomes, Watson. Joe even mentioned Carson Wentz kind of being an outlier on there. But of this wave of young quarterbacks leading into the next generation, who is the headliner of the group, the leader per se?
I mean, it has to be Pat Mahomes. I mean, as much as I think we're all enamored right now with Lamar Jackson, Mahomes showed last year with 50 touchdowns and 5,000 yards passing. And he continues to, even in a, I guess you could say by comparison down year, he's still an elite level quarterback. Like, he's been pretty incredible. And I think that's the guy.
I feel like Joe and I are leaning a different direction.
Ooh.
Yeah. I actually think Russell Wilson's a better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes. I think he's a better decision maker. If you put Russell Wilson with Andy Reid in that offense that they run and let him throw the football as much as they do, Russell Wilson would be throwing for 5,050.
Well, now you said young quarterback. So Russell Wilson's like 30, right?
Yeah, I was wondering where the generation starts. But if you look at quarterback years, he probably has 7 to 10 more years. So I think he qualifies as a young quarterback still.
Gotcha. I was kind of looking at like the 25 and under crowd, I guess, where I'm looking at the Darnolds, the Mahomes, the Jacksons, all these guys in the last few years that we're starting to see the league become peppered with.
I think you have to include Russell Wilson because if you're going to put him in a generation, you can't put him in the one with Peyton Manning, and all of the other quarterbacks that got drafted in the same year as him and around him suck. They're terrible.
Yeah, and that's fair. I guess without having any rules, Russell Wilson, I'll agree, is a better overall quarterback. And some of that could just be the experience of the position too. Having been in the league for 8 years and seeing some things that he's seen, he's just really growing and maturing and getting to that point where we're getting his best work out of him. And it makes me wonder what we'll see from a guy like Mahomes in 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, if Mahomes continues to develop, we have some scary things down the road.
Kind of a quick side question with this. If Andrew Luck had continued on, where do you think he'd be in this list? Would he be up there with Wilson, or would he be maybe below Mahomes?
I think he fits in there somewhere probably in the middle. He's in that group. He has to be. I mean, he's one of the most physically gifted quarterbacks we've seen come into the league. And obviously, I don't mean physically gifted in the sense that he's the fastest guy, most athletic guy. He was athletic, and he was very good at moving around. But I mean, in terms of just natural quarterbacking ability, Andrew Luck is one of the finest quarterback prospects that's come into the league in a very long time.
I think also if you're looking at Jacoby Brissett and Brian Hoyer and what they were able to do on this football team, think about what Andrew Luck would be doing right now. That team would be so good.
Yeah, he'd be in the MVP conversation for sure.
All right, guys. Well, let's dive on into the show. Let's do some news.
News and notes from across the NFL.
All right. Normally we hit injuries on our Thursday show, and we still will. We'll get into the more nitty-gritty stuff. But there's a lot of kind of big name injuries or big name scares that happened this week. So I'm going to quickly run through these. First up, Jacoby Brissett, who we just mentioned, had an MRI on Monday that confirmed it was a minor MCL sprain. He's actually not been ruled out for the Miami game this week. So if you're an owner, stay tuned. Deshaun Jackson has had abdominal surgery and is out for the remainder of the fantasy season at the very least. He came into the week after having recovered from a small abdominal tear, but after Sunday, he re-aggravated it, and they are reporting the muscle is now torn from the bone. So that's real bad. Adam Thielen re-aggravated his hamstring injury in last week's loss to the Chiefs. He's not expected back till at least week 12 or later, and they have said they will not rush him back per sources close to the team. So if you're a fantasy owner, I'd be panicking right now. And Preston Williams, after a fantastic 2-touchdown performance on Sunday, suffered a season-ending knee injury. Where do y'all want to start?
Preston Williams, I'm so sad. It was like the breakout game for him. Over the last 4 weeks, in terms of air yards, there were only 3 players that had at least 75 air yards in each of the last 4 weeks. Tyreek Hill, Preston Williams, DeAndre Hopkins. Why did Miami have him returning punts? That is so stupid. He was their best wide receiver. He was like on the breakout right now. I'm so mad.
He was returning punts because it's Miami.
It's so stupid. He's a good football player. Put Jakeem Grant back there.
Right. And he's one of the best punt returners in the game. He should absolutely be back there handling it. And that's a shame. And he was one of those guys we talked about in the preseason, him, Jacoby Myers, and some of these other guys, who's not only going to make a team, but maybe make an impact. And he was really growing that role and really starting to kind of grab the reins of being the wide receiver 1 on that team. It's a bad team, but still there's some volume to be had. And man, arrow was pointing straight up. It's such an unfortunate turn of events for him.
This Adam Thielen thing, what are you guys feeling on this one? Especially getting this close to the fantasy playoffs. They're not going to rush him back. He may not be back till week 13, week 14. Are y'all at all worried? Are you maybe trying to ship him here at the trade deadline for fantasy?
I've got a bad feeling about this.
Oh, God.
Yeah! Get it! No, but seriously, you can't trade him. You're screwed. If you still have Adam Thielen, you're totally screwed.
There's a guy in one of my leagues that has Thielen and Steph Diggs. That's his wide receiver Diggs 1 and 2.
Just shot through the roof in terms of value, but
oh, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know that he has another wide receiver on the roster. I don't know what he has laying on the bench, but I remember looking at those 2 guys and we were talking about trades, and I couldn't find anything on his bench that I was even remotely interested in. So it was some guys, if you're in that spot, you're hurting. You're combing the wire this week.
So either of you guys buy low if somebody was panicking and just tried to ship him? Would y'all pay a low price, or would you not want to own him at all?
If I'm sitting here like I am in a couple of leagues at 7-1, about to be 8-1, maybe I'll take that chance if I can get him for super cheap. But I don't see how you could if you're in a playoff race. You can't give up capital that would start on anyone else's team so that you can throw him on the bench and pray.
Yeah, I think that's actually going to be a pass for me. As I'm gearing up for the playoffs, especially if it's like a redraft situation, I'm not interested in grabbing a guy who might be a question mark. You're kind of snagging him and praying. There's plenty of other receivers that have some upside that'll be worth it. Heck, BC Johnson's probably just hanging out on the waiver wire right now. You might go get him, and he's going to have more upside over the next few weeks.
All right, and the only non-injury related news I have here, Dolphins running back Mark Walton has been suspended for 4 games for violating the NFL's substance abuse policy. I'll pretend to be surprised.
I think we're all going to pretend to be surprised on this one.
I was shocked he was even playing. 3 arrests in the offseason. I was already shocked he was getting time.
Is it just me, or does Kalen Ballage season feel like a really, really dreary late fall day where it's like about to snow, 20-mile-per-hour winds? You go outside and you're like, I think this could be worse, right?
You know what it is? It's actually that day, late fall, early winter, where it's cold enough or almost cold enough to snow, but not quite. You just get a little bit of that freezing sleet, and it's just enough to make you completely miserable without the payoff of the snowstorm and being able to, enjoy some winter weather.
Yeah, screw Kalen Ballage season. It's gross. Yeah,
it's one of those situations where, honestly, if he's the lead dog now and he's the only back and you've got a roster spot, you kind of have to have him based on volume. You can't leave running back 1s on any roster just sitting on the waiver wire typically. So I don't love it, but if you're hurting at running back, there's probably worse guys to pick up.
I just don't want to really own any Dolphins running backs going forward. When you look at the talent they've squandered over the last few years, I mean, you can start with Jay Ajayi. He did have knee issues and all that, but he wouldn't want a ring in Philadelphia. You've got Lamar Jackson doing pretty good things when he hasn't gotten a torn ACL in Houston. Damian Williams, Kenyon Drake with the week he left looked amazing. I mean, it's just, I don't want to be running back in Miami at all.
Yeah, that whole O-line's terrible, and Balaj really needs to see the field better. He just doesn't understand the blocking concepts yet, and you can see it when he's slamming into the back of his guards and he's missing the cutback lanes. But at the same time, though, if he's going to be the one for the next 4 weeks, it might be worth dumping a guy that you're never going to play. If you've got an equally bad player sitting on the end of your bench, it might be worth dumping him and picking up, just because you can't leave a guy that's going to get any volume at this time of the year.
Preston Williams was my wide receiver 6, and I will be spending a little bit of fab on Kalen Balaj to fill that spot.
Yeah, like that's an example. You lost somebody in injury. Maybe you're just super thin at running back, right? You need a third running back or a fourth running back. He might be the guy you have to go get.
He's going to be a low-end flex some weeks if he gets 20-plus touches.
And I think that's realistic because now that Williams is out of the equation, all the other running backs are out of Miami. Somebody's got to touch the ball there. I mean, even if they're running, you're talking 50, 60 plays a week, who's going to see all those looks? Like, even if he sees it 20 times and only gets you 70 yards, like that's still 7 points, right? Like, take any points you can get. And
he's probably going to catch 3 or 4 balls in that stretch too, if he's on the field for 80+% of the snaps.
Yeah. And if he lands you 10 points in a given week, if he just scrapes double digits, it's a win. Chalk it up as a W and keep it moving.
All right. That's all the news. Let's dive into our cheap date review. Joe, you won this week.
Currently, I'm up by 126.4 points, guys.
You are absolutely murdering it, sir. Congratulations to you.
For background, both Jeff and I did not set lineups because of how sick we were. Joe tells us that's no excuse because, he set one with straps. So he's right. But Joe, your lineup actually did pretty all right this week. You want to dive into where you succeeded and where you didn't?
It really all kind of hinges on Amari Cooper and Evan Ingram because I had them both in here. Right now, they're not all that good, but second half touchdown, who knows? By the time that you're listening to this, you'll know. The guy I really succeeded with was Tyler Lockett. I had Tyler Lockett in 100% of my DraftKings lineups this week. He was in a smash spot. Derek Carr was my quarterback. He was my cheap date. He was pretty good, 20 points, 3.56x. Adrian Peterson, also really good. Danny Amendola sucked, 5.9. Dallas Goedert, okay, 7.9. The Eagles defense was okay with 6. This wasn't like a smash lineup, but it did pretty well in a lot of spots. Dalvin Cook was the real fail. If I would have found room for CMC, this lineup would have crushed it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good looking squad there. I mean, obviously, if you can land CMC and he's hanging a 40 burger on people, then yeah, I mean, that'll help quite a bit.
I actually had a lineup this week in a tournament with Tyler Lockett and CMC in it. $3 entry. I won like $18, so pretty good.
There you go.
All right, so we need to hash something out real quick. Joe obviously is the winner this week, but Jeff, between you and I, who's going to be second, who's going to be third? I think by takeaway trends, I should be the silver medal, as usual.
Whatever.
So I think you lose this week, Jeff, by
whatever. That's fine. Here's the thing. I'm married. I'm used to being wrong. It's okay. I'll just go ahead and take the L on this one.
All right. Well, since we don't have more cheap dates to dive into, let's do something different. Let's talk trades.
Freddie. Trade talk.
It's that time of year. The trade deadline is approaching in a lot of fantasy leagues. So I just wanted to talk about a couple of guys each that we think you could go buy and that you would actually want to purchase. Probably a buy low candidate here or there, and what we want to pay for them. So my first guy was Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd has been getting 10 targets a game. He's got a new QB coming in, so a lot of people are going to be scared. He's had a few down weeks. I'm not saying that you should go out and you should spend a ton of capital on this guy, but if you've got somebody that's really needy at running back and they have a ton of wide receivers, I know I'm in that situation owning Tyler Boyd. I think you could give up a guy like even a Miles Sanders. It could go really poor on you, but he also could come in and have a quarterback that's better than Andy Dalton to getting the slot receiver the football. So Tyler Boyd is the guy that I'm going out there and buying. I also had some people that were asking me this week. I have 3 elite tight ends. I've got Austin Hooper, I've got Darren Waller, and I've got Mark Andrews sitting on my bench. Like, what do I do? And the answer for me is go trade anyone not named Darren Waller or Austin Hooper. Like, go Mark Andrews for Tyler Boyd, do it immediately.
Yeah, I like that. I would absolutely do that, especially with Andrews being a little down. Someone will want to buy the name. They're going to hear Mark Andrews and they're like, yeah, give me that guy.
All right, Jeff, you're up next. Who is your first trade target?
You know, when it comes to trade targets, my whole thing is I always like to deal from strength, right? Kind of makes sense. And I try to find teams that have a little bit of surplus. I'm hoping, a guy like Derrick Henry is sitting on someone's roster as like a running back 3 option, or even a fringe 2-3. Maybe he's a flex type player. And I'm willing to go take him because he still is getting the bulk of the opportunity in the running back position in that offense. Volume is king this time of the year because his guys get beat up every week and we're going to keep losing guys in the war of attrition. He's a gigantic man who's very fast. He's going to pop off some big runs. He hasn't looked that good this season, and I'll grant you that, but he does get the volume. He's worth taking a look at, especially if you can get him for a guy like DJ Moore, or if you can get him for a guy. Heck, I would even consider right now, if it's redraft, I might try and sell Juju Smith-Schuster as the name to go get a guy like a Derrick Henry. He hasn't been really performing up to snuff, and that offense is kind of a train wreck right now just because of the quarterback position. So if you can move him and go get Derrick Henry, that might be a big win for you coming down the stretch.
I think one of the side notes we should mention there is that if Dion Lewis is on the waiver wire in your league and you're trimming the fat looking for an upside play down the stretch, you should probably grab him if the Derrick Henry owner hasn't. Because this time of year, like Derrick Henry goes down, all of a sudden Dion Lewis is getting a ton of volume.
Yeah, if you're in a position where you're going to be one of the top teams, if your playoff spot is locked up, we should say, trim the fat, go get your handcuffs, go make sure that you've got yourself positioned so that if you lose one of your studs, you're well prepared to continue your success through the playoffs.
All right, I'm up next, and I kind of want to preface this. The way I trade in fantasy, and this may irk some people, but I usually ask somebody, I say, I've got my eyes set on this player. Who do you want for them? Because I find that you easily can find what their value is right then and there. You're not like sending a weird offer and having them look at it and scoff. And you can kind of banter back and forth. You can haggle and figure out your price. The first guy I'm targeting is Jameson Crowder. And I'm mainly doing this because A, the usage is there. Jameson Crowder looks fantastic on the Jets, but he plays on the Jets. The stigma around Sam Darnold and that whole offense right now is just one of fear, of worry. I'm not too worried about Jameson Crowder. Even if they suck the rest of the season, garbage time will be there. He'll get a ton of targets. I want him on my team. And honestly, right now, he might still be on some people's waiver wires. I'm not saying a lot, but it's a potential there because he was out for so long.
He's only owned in 54.4% of leagues, so he's out there on the waiver wire.
So for sure, go check for him first. But if he's not on the waiver wire, if he's on somebody's bench, I feel like he's somebody that somebody might be willing to part with for maybe one of your bench players. It could be an even bench swap. You're not actually giving up any capital that's going to affect you the rest of the season. And Crowder could be somebody you fit in the flex and leave there because the Jets have fantastic matchups going forward.
Heck, if you're carrying 2 defenses and one of them has looked really good lately, throw that offer out there. Some people might trade you a good defense for Jameson Crowder, and then you could just stream because streaming is the way to go anyway.
Yeah, I'm not really a proponent of carrying 2 defenses unless you're running an elite one and you've got a bye week. You don't want to lose your elite level defense. Last year it was the Bears. This year it might be the 49ers. Like, if you're really concerned, that's the only time you should have more than one defense. But once that bye week's gone, you need to get rid of that other defense. So if you can trade it, man, do it.
I actually am kind of a proponent of carrying 2 defenses this time of year, and it's 2 defenses or 2 quarterbacks or 2 tight ends. And the reason you do it is because you can look ahead to next week's matchups while you're still getting guys in free agency and not having to spend fab on them. Just drop that 6th or 7th wide receiver that you're never going to throw in your lineup, pick up your defense for next week, and then you can cycle again after that.
Well, and a lot of this comes down to how many bench spots do you have? So I know I'm in a lot of leagues where it's short bench. You get 5 guys or so on your bench, and it's, keeper style league. So they try to keep the free agency and waiver wire full. So it gets pretty difficult to keep you're handcuffing your stud, down the playoff stretch run here, or you're trying to insulate against some bad matchups for a wide receiver or a tight end, plus trying to keep an additional quarterback or defense. It gets pretty nasty. If I have to prioritize, defense is going to the bottom of the barrel. And then that number two, that number 2 quarterback, number 2 tight end, they might be right after it.
Yeah, I'm not saying drop anyone of value on your roster, but if you have 7 or 8 bench spots in a 12-team league, it's not a bad strategy to go out there and grab your defense for next week if that's the best thing sitting there on the waiver wire.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Always have the most points possible on your team. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
All right, Jeff, we're going to go back to you. Who's your second trade target?
My second guy, my first guy are kind of interchangeable. I'm going with wide receiver DJ Moore. And the reason why I took Moore and then Henry before him is because a lot of times if you have running backs, you probably need a wide receiver. If you have wide receivers, you probably need a running back. And these two guys could very easily be traded for one another. If you have a lot of running backs and you need a wide receiver, a guy like DJ Moore or even Calvin Ridley, very similar players, getting tons of opportunity in their offense still, but they're pretty under the radar. They can easily give you 15 to 16 in a week. And they're certainly worth a bye week flyer for a couple of these last bye weeks we have coming up. Like Houston, for example, will be on bye next week, and you're going to lose D-Hop and Stills and some of these other guys.
I like it. All right, my next one is Miles Sanders, and it's kind of leaning towards what you said earlier about Derrick Henry. Miles Sanders is going to be somebody's running back 3, running back 4 on their roster unless they've just been decimated by injuries. And his usage looks like it's going up. Joe, I assume you know that better than I would. Has his usage still been trending upwards?
Yeah, he had 13 touches this last week. He had single-digit carries every week for 4 weeks before that, though. So it is kind of concerning that he doesn't get a whole lot of volume in the running game. But he's one of those players. He's getting the targets. He's getting receptions. And he could take any one of those to the house on any play. He's that kind of player. So I think he's a pretty good pickup at this point.
Yeah, and that's mainly why I want to own him. I mean, there's also a chance Jordan Howard could get hurt. Like you said earlier, Joe, this is the time of year where players get hurt. And Miles Sanders is just that kind of guy that has that explosive talent, and he's going to be cheap for you. You could probably trade another bench player for him if you have a wide receiver and that guy's desperate. I could see trading a Terry McLaurin or something for him.
Man, if you can get something out of Terry McLaurin right now, do it, because Dwayne Haskins going in absolutely killed him. I don't know if there's a point where they go back to Case Keenum once he's through the concussion protocol, but holy cow, Haskins is terrible.
Yeah, he is not ready, and he does not look good at all. And what's great about it is that all of this makes Dave Gettleman look so much smarter than I believe he really is, because he passed on Haskins and went Daniel Jones, and we all laughed at him in April. And now, this guy is just miserable, and he's tanking everybody's value in that offense.
All right, Joe, we're back around to you. Who is your last trade target?
Go get Davante Adams. Look at that Packers schedule. You could even wait a week or two, because if your trade deadline is after their bye in week 11, you could go get him when somebody's panicking. Carolina's probably going to shut him down to a degree. Then he's got the bye week. Then he's got San Francisco. I'm sure there are people that are out there thinking, I got to get some production out of my wide receiver position. After that San Francisco matchup, they've got the Giants, the Redskins, the Bears, the Vikings, and the Lions. Those are all plus matchups for him. He's going to be great down the stretch as long as he is back from that turf toe injury. And I think you could get him for like a running back 2 at this point. If you're stacked at running back, you could probably get somebody, if you had Darren Waller and Austin Hooper, to trade you either of those tight ends for Davante Adams. Like, I'm into going to grab him for almost anyone. I would even, if I'm carrying 2 quarterbacks and I was lucky enough to get a Lamar Jackson, and I still have a good amount of players on the waiver wire at the quarterback position, I'll stream plus have like a Matthew Stafford and try and package one of those guys to go get myself a Davante Adams.
It's a big boy move to go get Davante Adams. I actually tried to pick him up in my keeper league, and we were talking about doing what I would consider to be a big boy trade. There's a lot of names in it: Kamara, Mike Thomas, Davante Adams, D-Hop, and Dalvin Cook, all in the same trade. It was pretty legit, and the guy with Adams couldn't do it. He actually couldn't part with Adams.
Yeah, I'm a Devontae Adams owner in a few leagues, and it would take a lot to get him from me, but I think you could at this point. Like I don't need to get a win right now in one of those leagues, but the one where I'm 4-4, about to go 5-4, if you gave me right now production, I think I'd strongly consider it.
Jeff, I'm going to request those grunting noises you made you never do on the show again.
Which ones?
Please and thank you. Yeah, those. That's it. No more.
Joe, can we get those turned into a drop?
Yes, absolutely.
Something's going to have to replace the Gardner Minshew drop. Oh, I know. It's also a sad day. We left our gardener in London. Moment of silence for Gardner.
The takeaway.
All right, guys, we don't have booth reviews, but we still have our takeaways from the week. Jeff, what was your biggest takeaway from this week?
How about Lamar Jackson just giving it to Bill Belichick and the Patriots? It all depends on your scoring mechanism, but he got 30 for me in one league. 61 yards rushing, a couple touchdowns there, 163 passing and a touchdown. You're talking about a guy who can go for under 200 yards, but still rush for enough on designed run plays that he's going to carry you to QB1 or near it numbers every single week. And he's not turning the ball over. There's no fumbles. There's no interceptions. This guy has been absolutely incredible. And I'm trying not to be a prisoner of the moment when I look at his numbers versus, some of the other quarterbacks out there. But he is just so dang good, man. It just seems like everyone's in slow motion around him.
Is his floor a low-end quarterback one every week?
Well, here's the thing about his floor. His floor is quarterback 3, but in the weeks where his floor is quarterback 3, he's a running back 1 most weeks. So you don't really have to worry about him not passing the football well, because when he can't throw it, he just runs it.
Yeah, that's true. As a quarterback, if I just separate the rushing numbers out, 61 yards and 2 touchdowns. You're talking that's about 18 points. He's giving you, running back 1 numbers there. He's right there. He's in that. He's, maybe low end compared to the McCaffreys and the other guys in the world. And yeah, the quarterback number's not great. But if you're telling me I can get a little bit of love from a quarterback and he's just right around Andy Dalton's level, but then I'm also going to get basically a fringe running back 1 out of my quarterback spot every week, no brainer. He's a fantasy gold mine, and you got him for nothing this year.
Lamar Jackson has 637 yards rushing right now. Like, there are a bunch of running backs that are in front of him in rushing yards, but a lot of them have played 9 games instead of his 8. Like, as a running back, not including receiving yards, he's basically the running back 7 this year. So it's not just that he can throw the football adequately. He's going to run the football. He has 5 rushing touchdowns this year. That's a ton of rushing touchdowns. His production is insane. And it's not just fantasy value. Like, he's a really valuable quarterback for the NFL because you simply can't guard him. How do you guard against a guy that can beat you deep and also is a running back?
You can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. This offense that he's in is exactly what Kaepernick was doing in 2012 when he was going bananas. The only difference is that Lamar Jackson can actually throw the ball. And I don't mean just like the fastball like Kaepernick could do. He has some ability to throw with a degree of accuracy to all parts of the field. He's not Pat Mahomes or Deshaun Watson or any of these other guys, but he's more than serviceable, which is what makes him all the more dangerous. Because if you've got to try and stop him from running, you have to dedicate basically 2 spies to him. That takes 2 guys out of coverage. That's why their tight ends are always open.
Lamar Jackson feels like the real life version of Michael Vick from like the old Maddens, where he was unstoppable and you just pick somebody else in a game with your friends. It just feels like the real life version of that.
Well, yeah, we had rules. Nobody was allowed to be the Falcons and you couldn't have Mike Vick.
Exactly. And in real life, nobody should be allowed to have Lamar Jackson, but the Ravens do apparently. All right, the next one, Joe, before I ask you yours, I kind of want to do one that's you and I together. How about Brandon Allen? Pretty impressive.
He wasn't Joe Flacco, so that's good.
Yeah.
Showing some mobility was refreshing as a Broncos fan. That was pretty nice.
Long term, though, what do you think about, say, the value of a Cortland Sutton or Noah Fant after this game?
I think that the value for Noah Fant went way up because he's getting a ton of target. You got a 20% target share in this game. They only threw the ball 20 times, but if they trust him more and more to throw the football, assuming Brandon Allen continues to start in this offense, Fant looks like he's a guy that you could grab right now. He's cheap. He's on the waiver wire in most leagues. And Courtland Sutton, I think you can pretty much throw the ball within 10 yards of Courtland Sutton and he's going to catch it right now. Did you see that You Got Mossed play?
Yeah.
That was
fantastic.
ridiculous. That catch was so awesome.
Yeah, I was going against him in fantasy in one of my leagues, like my flagship league. And watching that play just made every part of me just cringe.
That's good. Me and Joe like that something we enjoyed made you cringe. That's a plus for the
It
weekend.
was so bad.
All right, Joe, what's your takeaway from the week?
My takeaway is that we keep looking at this Chiefs defense when we've got wide receivers and saying, oh, that's a good matchup. Not so much anymore. Like the first 4 weeks of the season, you could pretty much pencil in your wide receiver one against the Chiefs as a 20 to 25 point game. But since week 4, when they played the Lions, KC's only given up 1 touchdown to wide receivers. That was to Olabisi Johnson this week. During that stretch, they played T.Y. Hilton, DeAndre Hopkins, Courtland Sutton, and Emmanuel Sanders, all the Green Bay wide receivers in a week that Aaron Rodgers threw for 305 and 3, and Stephon Diggs. Not a single wide receiver one allowed during that stretch. Like, this isn't a matchup that you can target anymore. In fact, it might be a bad matchup for wide receivers.
Feels hard to wrap my mind around, man. Like you said, the perception is it's an easy matchup. And even after you said all that, I still go, but I don't know.
Yeah, but like, how do you explain all those names? Like T.Y. Hilton, DeAndre Hopkins, just those two alone, like they pretty much pooped the bed against this defense.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing we've always loved about going against the Chiefs defense is that they would typically go up by a bunch of points and be in soft coverages. And so we weren't necessarily getting garbage time, but it was soft early where you could pick up a lot of points in the second half of games. I don't have any factual data to back that up, but I bet if we went back through and checked the game script on a bunch of those games, it was probably soft defenses in positions where teams were behind and chasing, and that's where suddenly these wide receivers were going bananas. The personnel hasn't really changed that greatly. If anything, it's really gotten thinner and more kind of mixed up, and they've lost some pass rush. So it's either just the team starting to coalesce a little bit defensively and they're playing better, maybe, or there's just, they're not scoring as many points and teams are playing them tighter and more competitively, and the wide receivers aren't being used as much underneath and in softer looks.
All right. Well, I got a few more takeaways, some quick ones. First one's more of a question. Adam Gase and Freddie Kitchens are not worried about their job security. Do you guys think they should be? Because I do.
Yes, absolutely. Both of those teams got worse.
Gase, yes. And as much as it's going to pain me to say it, Kitchens, no. Here's what's going to happen. Kitchens is going to get a second shot at this thing, I feel like. The Browns have run through too many head coaches, and that front office is really looking for continuity. So I don't think doing a one and done with Freddie Kitchens after getting rid of Hugh Jackson is really going to be the answer they're looking for. They're going to try and get him a little bit of offensive line help in the offseason. They're going to help him with some ways to get better. They're probably going to advise him to go to his offensive coordinator for play calling. I'm sure a lot of changes will be forced on him after this season, and he'll have next season to figure it out. And if he doesn't, then he'll be gone. Meanwhile, Adam Gase, with all the improvements the Jets made, injuries be damned, he's still a losing football coach. Ever since Peyton Manning went away, this guy has done nothing. He and Peyton left each other's sides. Adam Gase has done literally nothing. He shouldn't be a head coach. He shouldn't be getting a second shot as a head coach. This guy should be, I don't even know where he should be. He should be like a position coach, because I don't even know if he can go back to being a coordinator at this point. He just looks so uninspired as a play caller. He's a waste of space right now for the Jets.
If you can ruin Le'Veon Bell, you should be fired immediately.
Yeah, I think he's actually ruining Le'Veon Bell. I think he's ruining Robbie Anderson. I think he's ruining pretty much that entire team. Because the one thing we do know about Adam Gase is that he's got a little bit of that Chip Kelly locker room ruiner kind of mentality to him, where he wants to go in and be Billy Badass, got to buy into the system and get rid of you kind of a situation. He likes to shoot his mouth off quite a bit. See, like the comments he made about Lev Bell. Well, I wouldn't have paid the running back. I wouldn't have given him all that money. That kind of stuff doesn't sit well in a locker room. So it's going to make it a lot harder for these guys to buy into your message. It wouldn't shock me in the slightest to see him gone at season's end.
All right, the other thing I have, the backup quarterbacks did pretty good this week. I'm looking specifically at Brian Hoyer, who got thrown in at the last second after that weird Jacoby Brissett injury, and Matt Moore. Both players, you could say, did not lose the games for those teams. They kept them in it. They were very good. I was actually quite impressed.
Oh, poor Adam Vinatieri. I just want him to retire right now. They need a new kicker. It feels terrible watching him die on the vine like this.
It's like 3 wins that he's cost them this year. That team could be like a 2-loss team right now.
Yep.
You hate to put everything on the kicker like that, especially when it is a legendary one like Adam Vinatieri. The Colts had some other chances to win that ball game. And Hoyer, I mean, he played well. I mean, he threw a pretty bad pick 6 to Minka Fitzpatrick. The Colts are still very much in the playoff thick of things. And they just need 1 or 2 more bounces to kind of go their way. What is it? Every one of their games has been decided by like less than 7 points.
Yeah, something crazy like that.
Wins and losses. It's been ridiculous. So the fact is they just need to maintain that focus on offense. There's not a single possession that can be wasted. I think they used to be able to waste possessions with Andrew Luck because they could run up and down the field and pretty much score at will. I love Jacoby Brissett, and he's playing really, really well. He's not Andrew Luck, and they don't have that same kind of ability to just run up and down the field like a track meet. So they really need to be on purpose coming down the stretch here and getting focused around how they're going to play better defense now that Darius Leonard's healthy, especially with their secondary still banged up, and how Jacoby Brissett can keep turning some of those third downs into first downs to keep that defense fresh.
Yeah, I'm all for giving Adam Vinatieri the benefit of the doubt, but he's missed 10 kicks this year.
Well, certainly. I think we both agree he should have been gone in week 2. Like when he talked about initially trying to retire and leave and all that, because he had 1 foot out the door then, and then Frank Reich talked him into staying. Like that tells you everything you need to know about the headspace Adam Vinatieri's been in. He probably needs to go away. But at the same time, like I feel like he's earned a place in the league right now where he should be able to dictate that. And if he wants to walk away, great. But I would hate to see the Colts cut him and have him go out like that.
Yeah, no, he needs to retire on his own terms, but he needs to do it now.
Yeah. Who do you bring in at kicker? Who's out there? If you cut, say Vinatieri retires tomorrow.
To be honest, I don't pay that much attention to the kicker position because I don't have kickers in my fantasy leagues, but there's got to be a kicker out there who can make you an extra point consistently. Like you don't even need a guy that can kick you 60 yarders. You need a guy who can make you extra points like 80% of the time.
I think there was something really wrong with the gravitational pull of the moon on Earth because even Justin Tucker missed an extra point this week.
I lost $65 because of Justin Tucker missing an extra point. It's garbage. It's his second missed extra point of his career.
I just wanted to twist that knife in there a little bit. I got a little salt on the blade for you, too. I just wanted to bring that one right back for you. Sorry, buddy.
Jerk.
All right, that'll do it for the takeaway. Let's dive into the waiver wire. Let's tap the wire.
Tapping the wire.
All right, first up, quarterbacks. At this point, you're streaming, but I take a look at Brandon Allen. Again, had a pretty good game this week. Depends on how he keeps on developing, if they want to see what they have with Drew Lock once he's back. But I like Brandon Allen. If you're really desperate, it's not a bad pickup.
One of my good buddies has a super flex league that he's in. And his quarterbacks were Tom Brady, Joe Flacco, and Andy Dalton. How much are you spending on Brandon Allen at this point in the season out of your fab budget?
What about Ryan Finley? Is he going to go get them both because he had Dalton too?
I think it's worth looking at, but either way, like those guys are going to be hot commodities in a super flex league that's this deep. Like how much are you going to go spend? Like 50% of your budget? 60, 70,
I'm going to
80?
go in super flex. I'm going to go bananas. And I might even be willing, depending on the makeup of the rest of my roster, I might spend it all. Blow it out.
Yeah, that's what I told him. I told him to go back and look at all of the previous transactions for mediocre quarterbacks that became available during the middle of the season. And if they were spending it all on them, that's what you got to do too.
So of the two, Allen or Finley, who are you targeting first?
Allen, for sure, for me. I think that offense is better. I think that the weapons are more suited to his talents. I think he's probably the better option in general. Might even be the more talented player. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I kind of like Finley. And truthfully, I actually stashed Finley as a taxi squad player in a bunch of dynasty leagues in the preseason. He's just been sitting there waiting. I've just been kind of hanging out, hoping that Andy Dalton wouldn't re-sign and this would become Finley's team. He's got an NFL arm. He's not going to be accused of being overly mobile or anything like that. He's mobile enough. He can move some, but he's a quick decision maker. He can drop back and deliver, and he does it with good rhythm. And he did a lot of that at NC State. So I'm looking at this guy, and I'm really hoping with AJ Green getting healthy and coming back, Eifert seems to be healthy and doing some things. You've got Boyd in there. This passing game maybe gets a small uptick, and it might be enough to free up Joe Mixon and finally get that guy going. I'm really hoping it's Finley, and I'm going to lean that way because I feel like there's enough weapons there. Not that Denver doesn't have some good weapons with Fant and Sutton and some of those guys, but Cincinnati with the pseudo Rams playbook going on there with a bunch of the weapons they have, they might be in a real prime position to just kind of pop out and surprise some people.
I just watched that offensive line play, and I'm not sure that any quarterback could succeed behind it.
They're really bad, and I won't even try to hide that. They might be one of the worst units in football because of all the injuries they've had. And Cordy Glenn allegedly was starting to get healthy, and they were going to try and plug him back in. I don't really know where that ended up, but I've got to lean back to when I think about, all of the college tape I spend time watching. I think we all do that, right? Pre-draft, we're just watching a ton of different players. Brandon Allen was not a guy that I recall ever being like, ooh, wow, there's a dude. But Ryan Finley a few times really surprised me. And I was like, dang, okay, this guy can play a little bit. And it'll be interesting to see how that manifests itself in this offense.
For the record, you mentioned Tyler Eifert being healthy. Thanks for jinxing him. The bubble wrap's going to wear off this week.
It's bound to happen at some point.
Well, I mean, yeah, the fact is he's been tackled like 3 or 4 times this year and didn't get hurt. You're already living on borrowed time.
Joe, go ahead and start him on a roster for me. Make the curse real.
Not going to happen. I like Tyler Eifert. I'm not going to do that to him.
All right, let's move into running backs. This list is actually pretty long comparatively to normal weeks. Ronald Jones, Kalen Ballage. I still got Darius Gase on here. He's looking like a week 12 return, so stash him until week 11, week 12. Check for Jalen Samuels and Kareem Hunt. Again, check. These are guys that may be there, maybe not. But Ronald Jones, Kalen Ballage, and even Darius Gase low owned enough to where they're probably out there. And if you got the roster spot, I'd snag them. Ronald Jones just got named as the starting running back today. So finally.
This number right here that I'm looking at, 38.9%. This number is exactly how you know that the fantasy community does not watch game film. Because Ronald Jones is clearly the best back in that system, and he was going to get more touches eventually if he didn't get hurt. And that's starting to happen right now. He got almost 50% of the snaps this last week. That's supposed to go up if Bruce Arians isn't giving us a bunch of coach speak. Why is he only owned in 38.9% of leagues?
He's got that 4-letter word tagged on him from last season. And the first parts of the season, BUST. I think people are really concerned about it because people were so hyped on him last year, and then he did nothing, and then he really didn't, distinguish himself in the preseason, and people are just kind of off on him.
Go get him. He could be a league winner down the stretch. Like, that offense isn't that good, but they are running the ball at a pretty good clip in terms of yards per attempt. Go Saquon. Wow.
Yeah, Jesus. That's what I was staring at. Like, whoa.
Sorry, we usually try and keep those comments to ourselves on the show, but wow, that was an awesome run. Go get your Ronald Jones. Like, I like the rest of these guys all right as stashes, but Ronald Jones could be a rest of the year starter on your team if the chips fall right.
Yeah, the only problem I have here is that running backs in that offense don't really touch the ball that much. Like, they're just not getting enough looks. I mean, from an opportunity standpoint, they're pretty light. That's the only concern I have because neither of these guys are David Johnson when, BA was in Arizona. I think if I'm looking at my fab budget and I'm looking at waiver priorities, I'm probably going to go ahead and I'm going to check for Kareem Hunt. I'm going to check for Darius Gase. Then I'm probably going to look at like Ronald Jones and Kalen Ballage, and I'll go Jones over Ballage.
Ronald Jones got 20 touches this last week. If that continues, he's a league winner as your flex.
Sure. Yeah. And that was this week. Everything I'm looking at on my screen over here doesn't have this week's numbers pumped into it yet. It's just season long up to this point. And it's, he's been more valuable than Barber, but he's still not somebody. He's a shade better than Tariq Cohen overall.
Yeah, but if his numbers go up and he starts getting 60% of the snaps instead of 50 like this last week or 30 like it was before that, sure, all of a sudden you're looking at a totally usable player.
Right. And that's the other part of it is like, are these games going to be shootouts or are they going to actually run the ball, keep it on the ground? That's going to be the other part of it. And with Godwin and Evans and those guys, it does scare me. It gives me a little bit of pause, but you have to have him over Ballage. But to be clear, I will absolutely go and roll the dice on Kareem Hunt in a split roll in Cleveland because they're going to have a package for him in week 10. And we know how explosive that guy is and what he can do, even on limited touches.
I think I want Ronald Jones more than I want Kareem Hunt.
Ooh, okay.
I'm just watching the film, man. Like the film on Ronald Jones in the limited time that he's had, like especially in those games where he got 20 touches this last week and in week, I want to say it was 4, he had some amazingly explosive plays. If he's going to get 15 to 20 touches a game, even maybe more like 20 or 25 in some games, he's a guy that could give you 20 plus points in any given week. And maybe Kareem Hunt does that, but maybe he only gets like 8 touches a game.
The only issue here is that just because he's the starter doesn't mean that Peyton Barber isn't going to still get some love here and he's still going to pilfer him. So if you've got to deal with a split with Peyton Barber, would you rather be splitting Ronald Jones and Peyton Barber or splitting Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb?
It depends on the split because I really think that Browns backfield is probably more like a 60-40, 65-35 split with Kareem Hunt because he's not in football shape at this point. He hasn't had full contact in about a year now. So you've got to work him in slowly. He's not a guy you can just throw out there and give full snaps to immediately. Ronald Jones is there.
Yeah, I guess I'm just going to lean on talent. And we've seen Kareem Hunt be a number one fantasy back, a legit number one guy. And I mean, he's got some matchups coming up that, maybe a little hit and miss. But I mean, Kareem Hunt, he goes or he's got Buffalo at home, Pittsburgh at home, Miami at home. So he's got 3 games at home right away. You go back into Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's tough. Yeah, I'll give you that. Cincinnati, Arizona, Baltimore, Cincinnati for your last 3 weeks of the year. And if you're playing week 17, that extra Cincinnati matchup's pretty cake. I don't know, man. It's all speculative when you're talking about this point in the year. And I don't know. I just don't trust Bruce Arians when he's like, ooh, Ronald Jones is going to be our starter now. Cool. It really means he's on the field first. It doesn't necessarily mean he's going to get 25 every week.
Yeah, I'm not expecting 25, but if he gets you 15 plus every single week, I think he's a much more valuable player than he has been.
Well, sure, he'll be more valuable than he has been, but Peyton Barber, the alleged starter before, I mean, he got double-digit touches in week 8, week 3, and week 2. That was Peyton Barber.
Peyton Barber was also a crappy running back.
Well, yeah, but have we seen outside of a couple little like flashes here and there, have we seen much more out of Jones?
I have actually loved his film so far this year. Loved it. Like he's had a lot more really quality runs, even short runs, than bad ones so far.
So he was already out touching Barber. He had 5 games at double-digit touches. 2 of them he went over 15 touches. So, like I said, it's all speculative from here, but if I'm adding a back at this point, there's probably some level of desperation to it anyway. I'm going to go, I just tend to lean towards talent, and we know what Kareem Hunt is. He's been an NFL leader in rushing yards. He's, torn people up in his first ever start. I'll never forget that game against the Patriots where he just torched them, catching the ball, running the ball. He was all over the field. And I really expect Cleveland to figure out how to use him to spell Chubb, number one. And then they're probably going to put the 2 of them in the backfield together. You're not going to keep Kareem Hunt off the field, especially if the Browns hope to trade him while he's on a restricted tender in the offseason.
All right, Joe, you got any low-end guys for us?
Not at running back. We pretty much covered them all. With the guys that you actually should pick up right now, those are the guys that would be on the low-owned list most weeks.
All right, let's move into wide receivers. I got Zach Pascal, and kind of an asterisk here. Maybe Chester Rogers. Hilton's going to miss a couple weeks, and Paris Campbell had surgery on his hand. He's not going on IR. They think he can come back, but you're looking at both those guys out for 2 or 3 more weeks at least. Devontae Parker, if he's out there, because obviously with Preston Williams going down, Parker's value goes a little bit higher. And Keelan Cole, Westbrook is inactive, and they just lost Marquise Lee for the season. So Keelan Cole's going to get some looks.
He had an 80+% snap share this last week. I don't know if that continues, but we'll see.
Of these 3 guys, who would y'all target first?
One of the running backs?
Yeah. I was like, I really didn't have anything on these receivers. It's pretty thin. Of the 3, I feel like I just keep hearing Zach Pascal's name, and I just can't trust Devontae Parker. So Pascal just seems like a guy that, for whatever reason, he just kind of keeps getting you numbers, and he's worth that kind of deep flyer. I don't trust Keelan Cole at all, and I trust Parker less.
Pascal's had value with Hilton, too, so that
Right.
kind of sways it in his direction as well.
All right, Joe, any low-owned wide receivers for us?
They're both Raiders, and they both scare me, but Zay Jones played 91.7% of the snaps. He's only 2.2% owned. I don't know if the usage is going to be there, but in deeper leagues, he's definitely worth a look. And Hunter Renfrow, his target share has risen in each of the last 4 weeks. It was like borderline elite this last week. So he's a guy that you can look at. I'm not thrilled about that passing offense, but if they're in a good matchup, you think they're going to be playing from behind, especially a slot receiver like Hunter Renfrow can have some major value.
Glad you're coming around, Joe. So glad you're coming around.
I love some Hunter Renfrow, but Zay Jones, he's just running naked through the waiver wire right now.
Right into the glass door.
Right into the glass door that keeps him from getting onto my roster.
All right, and tight ends, I've got Kyle Rudolph, who's obviously benefiting from Adam Thielen being out. Mike Gesicki has looked pretty good recently, and Jacob Hollister. I really like Hollister. They just lost Wilson this week. They already had Disley out. That tight end room is looking real thin, and they like the tight end in that offense, so he could be getting some looks.
You remember who my low-owned tight end was last week?
Yes, I do, Joe. I do.
I love it when those low-owned guys turn up on the you should play this guy guys.
Yeah, question for you. This is an honest one for the crowd here. Do you think Kyle Rudolph and Stephon Diggs the Adam Thielen injury? Get it? Do they
I hate
Diggs
you so
the
much right
injury?
now. I hate you so much right now.
I almost burst out laughing when I thought of it. I was sitting here listening to you guys talk, and I was like, oh, that's going to be gold. I got to use that.
I see how it is, Joe. You can't take him at his worst. Earlier in the show, you were like, yeah, bring on the bad jokes. Now you're like, I'm done.
That one was
only
bottom,
took about 45
bottom
minutes.
bottom tier stuff.
Well, we're
right
getting to the
there.
end of the show, man. I'm getting sleepy. We're getting a little punchy here. I'm still mad at Amari Cooper for not getting me any points.
All right, Joe, low-owned tight ends.
I mean, we kind of already talked about him, but Tyler Eifert's still out there. They're coming off the bye. They're going to be looking for a safety blanket with a young quarterback that likes to get the ball out quickly. I think you could do a lot worse than having Tyler Eifert on your bench to see if he blows up.
If you guys are going to keep talking about Tyler Eifert, I vote we start a GoFundMe. That way we can send the team down to the UPS store. They can get a load of bubble wrap. Just get him ready for this game this week. Because you're jinxing him. He's going to get hurt now.
I've talked about him for like 5 weeks in a row, so I don't think we're there anymore. He's going to get hurt at some point, but I'm not jinxing him this week. Ryan Griffin, we still got to talk about Ryan Griffin. He's a guy that has seen an increased role in that offense for the Jets every single week for the last 5 weeks, so I don't love him. There's another guy that's coming back from injury. You never know about an Adam Gase offense, but I think you could do worse than Ryan Griffin as a flyer.
Remember that time we were excited about Herndon coming back?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like,
I know. I was
he
like,
might
remember
exist
that?
at some point.
I mean, Pepperidge Farm remembers.
We got to end this one.
We got to get out of here. It's getting ugly over here.
All right, well, that'll do it then. Week 9 review in the books. Guys, we got to get sheet dates done this week. I got to get to first place again.
Yeah, maybe you guys should set some lineups this week.
We will. We will.
I'm just shaking my head.
All right, until Thursday, for Joe at Human Stat Sheet on Twitter, for Jeff at NFL_DiMatteo, and of course myself at MurphyFFT, or find us all in the NFL Fantasy Football Discussion Group on Facebook. We'll see you later. Bye, guys.
Shut up, Jeff.
Fine.
Where was the
Then he never shut up again.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Takeaway Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And follow the show on Twitter at FF Takeaway.
I really didn't have anything anyway. I was just stressed out. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say. I was like, oh, good. Thank you, Joe.